Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Canyon. Welcome back to another It Came From the Workbench series initiation. It technically is, because in a recent live stream, I'm jingling through the jingles, we made these. In the about 3 hours of that live stream, I assembled these 4 links. I didn't really feel like building anything that day. I feel more like building stuff today. So what we're going to do is we are going to put some and or most, I don't know how I feel right now. We have 4 links built. It came from the Workbench 44, the first episode of 44, and it is the Kuwu LCG kit, which is available on Amazon right now. I want to say about $139. And moving forward into the inevitable future, I feel like this is a thing that we're all either going to have to get comfortable with, we're going to have to embrace, we're going to have to do something. Because the kits provided to us by the big 4, that being Traxxas, Element, Axial, and Vanquish. That would be the big 4. And then you have the others. There's not, like, if you're planning on getting crazy, if you're planning on your rear links looking like that, they don't really have any options for you that aren't $139, and you'd be like, oh, well, what do I get? Well, you get the chassis, you get the links, you get the center chassis, you get a gearbox, you get the rear bumper. Here's the pieces for the gearbox. You get body mounts, you get the servo and panhard mounts, so you can run servo on axle, or you can run chassis mounted steering. We were going to do chassis mounted steering because we were going to pair this with Ally Express TRX4 clones that cost $56. Okay, so keep in your head, $56 for the axles. Then we've also got a battery tray with a strap that goes on there. We've got a front bumper. We've got sliders, and they will be sliders because they're aluminum and down low. We've got front and rear drive shafts. This was purchased additionally. This is the AMK pair, and at some point during the go through this, there are negative reviews on Amazon for this, the AMK pair. This is specifically for TRX4 axles. There's a 1035 and an 1134. I can do this. So it's basically 10% overdrive for the front and 10% underdrive for the rear. So yeah, it's a 1035, and I don't know, these aren't marked on the end as to what they go with the 33. I want to say stock is 1134, so this would be 1035 and 1233, getting us around 20%. Because the gearbox that comes with it is just fixed outputs. It doesn't have any overdrive, underdrive. The drawback to this gearbox would be specifically that it's too easy to work on. It has a little door that goes on this side, so you can set your gear mesh almost with both eyes closed, and also bolting the motor on will be a lot easier. It's basically just an opposite. Is it opposite output? No, it's the same direction. This is the ultra lightweights. This one is written on the bottom, weighs 49 grams. You have to look through this porthole that unscrews. You look through that porthole to set your gear mesh. These work fine. You just have to set your underdrive, overdrive via axle. And that's fine for us as well, because this is like $27 for the pair. And we will definitely talk about it because it's really easy. It's really easy. At worst case scenario, you might need a shim or 2. But people are like, oh, don't buy those things. 2 stars. Mine were noisy. Well, if they're noisy, you didn't put them in right, because they're machine gears and they work just fine. I think that was probably the 5th set that I've ordered. So we are going to go with basically everything you see before you. And as I said, keep that total running in your head, because even if we factor in the overdrive, underdrive, which not everyone needs, $139 for all of, oh, there's the rest of the links too, are here in the box. Now, and the bag with the rest of the ends that go. So it comes with everything. So what do we have here? Well, basically we have a slider for $200. It doesn't have a body wheels, tires, electronics. That's kind of a kit, and it's $200. Is this available cheaper on AliExpress? I don't know. Are those available cheaper on Amazon? Certainly not. Amazon price on those, if they were available on it. Now, okay, let's say we're not talking AliExpress TRX4 axles, and instead we're going to talk Mias nylons, which are about $80 a set. Then you're looking at what? $225, $230 for portals, much like these, and a slider. Then you add a body, wheels, tires, and electronics, and you're outfitted. This is going to get you, like, even if we're talking about VRD straight axle kit at $299.99, we're going to dispose of less from this than we would from that Vanquish kit, because if you build that Vanquish kit as is, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. You're basically building your own stance. And I think this is going to outdo it because, yeah, those are cut gears, non-centered gears inside the gearbox, actual, so machine gears. We will pop one of these. You know what? Before we get fully involved in the process, let's drop a gear cover and find out what we're looking at. Now, TRX4 gears that come in every TRX4 are centered. And I have never heard anyone mention having broken one, because TRX4 does not use helical gears. Well, these are helical, very slightly so. There's a lot of pinion engagement on these gears. It appears centered. And I'm interested to see what they've done on the inside. All right, we'll get there. This is a micro capsule review of the TRX4 AliExpress clone, $56 a pair. Okay, a lot of the clones, and this should just pull out. Yep, stub comes out. That looks exactly the same. Portal box looks exactly the same. You know what? We might have one here in the drawer. All right, clone portal box, TRX4 portal box. A little difference. So it's a, what do we call it? So a clone would be identical, a copy would be slightly not identical. I mean, it's close enough, you know. So if your worry were the wow, 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 wow. If your worry was the quality of the AliExpress plastics, you can obtain Trex's plastics very inexpensively. I want to drop the ring out, and I want to see what their approach was to. So ordinarily, so we got a little wiggle in there, This little shape right here is that on the Trexus that have lockers. I do not like the look. I will state right now, and for the record, I need a towel. We gotta wipe this blue goo off of here. It feels like it looks like tempera paint. It doesn't even look like grease, and we know that it's quality because I've spun that axle on my. Here's what I do. It's like a fidget spinner. You hold on right there and you spin it. It's nice and smooth. But just that amount of spinning has pushed basically all the grease out of the teeth. The only grease left is down here on the plastic housing. So I want to see... Oh, we're threading into plastic. I forgot. I don't have to worry about the questionable quality fasteners. Let's put it this way. I would not be reusing these, nor would I recommend that anyone reuse them. Now the rest of them looks like perfectly fine black oxide. What's inside? Whoa, bro. It's like we're looking into the infinity cube. So what they've made is, here's the center insert. This is wild stuff. This is the stuff that I love. This is the cloner stuff that is the absolute best for me. So the tube, which are not clocked, like, okay, see where that one is? And then if we rotate it straight around, that one's at like so that one's at like 2 o'clock, when this one is at like, no, it's more closer to 1 o'clock, and then this one's at about 3 o'clock. And then to put in the center of the housing, oh, I hope I can knock that out. We have to see the infinity stone removed from the diff housing. Sadly, the sad de moi, I can't get that little crystal fella out of there. He is really pressed in there, and there's no like ledge on the other side to push him out. This is a very interesting approach, because there's no way that this centerpiece could be used with the regular gear. Do I have a center that has gears in it? Well, I have a whole spool, but I mean, once again, they've gotten really close. This is the clone. This is a real Traxxas one. And then ordinarily, when they're going to make a spool, they do a spool unit like this, and it just bolts on with the 4 bolts like that. This is a very interesting approach to that problem. But I mean, they're getting really close. There's not as much depth. You can see that this is a deeper tooth on the real thing, and it's close. Also, you see the presses where they're punched. So if this is, it looks sintered, molded. So they definitely used different processes when these two were made. Also, look at the height of the stud that stops it from spinning. These are just almost vestigial. I mean, it's not going to matter. When it gets put back together, which will be shortly, they're going to be replaced with these machined. And the machined will give you an idea of what those studs are for. They don't even have them. A little bit of helical on there. Like I say, I have never had a single problem with any of these AMKs. And before I forget, we definitely need to mention my fingers right here. I go and I smell this blue. Let me drop those off of there. That both looks, smells, and feels like melted crayons. The smell is melted. It will take you back to your childhood during creative time in kindergarten. It smells like somebody took a blue crayon and scraped it across the teeth. I'm not sure that this is grease. This might be some kind of a wax. Like we can genuinely color with it. I think they used wax for whatever reason. Because I mean, look how clean it is in there. All the wax just came out. The hole where the diff locker, they have filled it with a glob of, is it just silicone? With like a glob of, it feels like hot glue. They hot glued that shut. The housings are effectively identical, but I can just tell by looking at the parts and pieces, there's a difference in the quality of Traxxas plastics versus these. So what that does rise up in us is a question. Okay, here's a front housing. There's a little bit of flash on there. Let's see if we can get that off. We may indeed. Doesn't quite seat perfectly. It seats very closely. See that little gap across the top? That little gap right there? Now this is off the rear. There is the possibility that there's just, oh, okay. Never mind. Never mind. So I was over here for a moment. Basically, here's what it comes down to. There's a little bit of extra flash right there. That little guy is just, he needs deburred quite a lot. He's too thick, so he won't seat down. So then I was thinking to myself, hey, How many TRX4 diff covers do you have? Like 18. So I'm not going to bother to deburr those. Did I mention at the initiation of this that this is indeed part of the Canyon giveaway series? This vehicle will be given away somewhat shortly. And what? Oh, that wasn't a razor knife. Whoo! I've brushed this off the bench and I almost had it stick in my foot more than once. How complete this will be on its departure. It will at the very least be a slider, but with a body. It will be a bodied slider because this thing will be run in the Canyon before it is given away. I think, and by think I mean I'm absolutely sure, that I am going to dig through the parts bins and I'm basically just going to put all of the fake gut. I'm not going to bother to disassemble these. These will be just the same. But I will detach these, slap them on. These are Traxxas, lightly used Traxxas portal housings. We will put Traxxas diff covers on them. We will rebuild the front and rear axles out. Most importantly, I will dig through the bin. I don't like the look of those C-hubs at all. But what do you want for $56? As much of the parts on that as we can replace with actual Traxxas as possible, I would like to do. And they will be getting the underdrive, overdrive cut gears. So I'm not saying that I don't, at this juncture, think that the $56 expenditure on those axles is poorly spent. The front universal look like... So that hits the cover badly. So the steering limitation is brought about by the fact that they put on a rod end with a tiny little bit of offset on it, not nearly enough. So we're going to have to replace, if not at least the rod ends, if not the whole linkage. Not a problem. I don't like that they've used some like either chrome plated or fake or low grade stainless steel as the kingpin screws. We'll replace those potentially, if possible, with actual Traxxas kingpins. I have plenty of them. And then we're going to get this guy. It also is running a reasonably substantial, probably 7 or 8 degrees of tow out. So you can see the threads right there. They didn't, whoever built this, as I like to say about a lot of these things coming in cloned from the Far East, the guy that built that doesn't know what he's building. He has no idea what it is. So my hands really smell like crayons. We are going to, because it is so TRX4, it does not come with shocks. That's a thing. So still counts as a slider. Jenny's about $40. TRX4. We will spring them appropriately to whatever turns out to be the sprung weight. For purposes of the Ghost Ride and the other, however many times it hits the rock. For those purposes, Amazon Blue Case, 3235. This is a 7.4 volt version. And I just reached into the bin and pulled out a Hobbywing Crick Run 1080 non-G2, this is the old one, with an Injora turn machine, 35 turn, which should be perfectly adequate. With the amount of gear reduction, the additional gear reduction that we're going to get off of a TRX4 portal versus some other portal, like say for instance a Vanquish or Axial is going to be around in the, a Capra is going to be in the 1.9 to 1 range, running 1223s on the outers. TRX4 portal is, if memory serves, 2.36 to 1. So there is a significant amount more underdrive. So basically the takeaway from this is, if you wanted to institute a bunch of rear underdrive, like too many percents, you could just run whatever portal you wanted in the front and then a TRX4 portal in the rear. And you'd be at, it's 19%. That's 19%. That's a pretty easy 19% to get to. TRX4 portals have pretty good clearance. Better clearance in the rear. We can just pop these in because they don't have the C-hubs. So the portal clearance is pretty good, particularly on this side. It's not bad. These aren't bad. These aren't bad. To me, from the perspective I operate from, I don't consider them pop them out of the package and run them. I don't consider any, really. I'm trying to think of one and nothing's coming to mind. I don't consider any of the stuff that we would bring in off of AliExpress or specifically clone stuff off of Amazon where I would be like, you know what? I'm just going to take these and run them because when we pull the screws out of the gearbox, more often than not, and by more often I mean all the time. Like, what are we taking bets on how much grease is even going to be in here? Is there going to be grease in here? There's a little smudge, and there's a little smudge of grease. But in evaluating the gearbox, looks like 5x10 bearings. That's not explicitly bad. Okay, the gears are pinned on, not swaged on. I like to see that. That gear is a little thin. That's a little bit thin. And I will go ahead and I will go through and I will count the teeth. And we will find out what our... Oh! Follow with me. The gear that looks very much like a hat gear in a servo has a little brass spacer so that it doesn't flop too much to one side. This gear is just swaged on to this little gear. And by that, I mean this was fixtured, and then they punched this gear onto that gear. And the part is because that pin just goes into a hole in the housing. Oh. So what I'm saying is, that is the pin. There's the other side. There's where most of the grease they attempted to put in. That pin is going to take load. Like real load. That is straight off the motor. That's probably the most torque anything is going to see. And that is a 2.5 millimeter pin. Now, this is not explicitly my concern. It would be my concern if I intended to put this thing into long-term service. But fret not, gentle viewers. This is the insane skid that comes with it. And you'll notice there's 6 holes on this side and only 2 holes on this side. And that is because those little offset holes, this is just a regular axial pattern, the 4-bolt, but they only use 3. That would go on right like that. So you could easily just bolt in any 3 gear. And whether it be a lightweight, low profile like this one, or a full-size 3 gear like an Axial or a Stealth X or something. Now, honestly, I'm not even going to lie about it. The fact that we can see that bearing right there, we can see the bearing, and we can see that the shaft that bearing rides on is a 4 millimeter shaft, which is still a little bit undersized. I would prefer 5 millimeter all the way around. But it's not a 2.5 millimeter pin. A big part of me is just screaming, put that in and not that. But I think at least for the build, because here's what I want to look at. If we just look at where the output shaft is, so that shaft would output right there, right above that, pretty much. So if we were to swap to this, it's basically identical. It moves it over about 3 or 4 millimeters. So I want to see this. I want to see 2.5 millimeter pin guy in service. So we're going to build it with him. But when it leaves here, it's most likely going to have this in it because I trust this more. So we'll get to that. But before we get to that, I want to get the link situation sorted a little bit better. And then we're going to do an opposite spectrum here. In this installment, which has gone on for a long time and I haven't really done anything, I don't want to build the front end. We'll put the rear end together and see how that lines up on TRX4 axles. Because chassis mounted steering, TRX4 axles, unknown chassis, skid forward, there's a lot. This front end is going to be a puzzle. And I don't want to struggle it. So I am going to probably set back to getting the parts oriented. Well, first of all, getting the rear axle put together. We're going to put that rear axle together. We're probably going to slap a drive shaft on it because we'll slap the middle part together, and then we'll move on to the next thing. But we'll do that for today. And before I get to that, I need to turn this into not just a random pile, but maybe a selection of things that we actually need to make this happen. All right, so why we step forward and then step back and then step forward again is best illuminated by the rear axle, but we will recreate it by talking about the front axle. This is the housing that came with the cheap AliExpress stuff, and as I had feared, it's very nearly very close. It's the Madame Tussauds. This is the wax version of the real thing. It's not quite the real thing. I attempted to insert the AMK ring and pinion, and just with this mechanism here and with all of the other internals, and nothing fit. I would have to insert. Where's my little guy? I got a little guy on a handle right here. I would have to insert this through the hole in the output from the pinion and turn it just to get it to turn. It felt like it was completely locked up. And then I started to think, are those Amazon reviewers right? Are they right? Did I do this? Did I do this by through hubris? So here is the AMK ring, the stock ring of the centered look. Here is the ring fitted to here. The AMK ring does not fit with this plastic piece. I had to take it to the lathe and take just a little bit off of that. The screws that hold the locker on do not fit. I had to take them to the lathe and turn the heads down ever so slightly. There we go. Ever so slightly to get them to fit. Those parts did not want to go together. So here is the ring gear installed and the pinion is installed. We have basically no side to side, and the fore to aft is a millimeter. It did come with, it had this little bit of shim for where the drive shaft attaches. So we will very quite likely reattach that. Also, these diff covers fit perfectly on this housing, and much how they wouldn't fit, just wouldn't quite fit on the Traxxas, vice versa. The Traxxas don't quite fit on these don't quite fit on the Traxxas. It's like similar, but different. It's not replacement parts. And then we do this is the easiest way to do it if you're worried about it. This is the recommendation I give everyone. You put your ring and pinion in, and then tighten this cover down. Cover's tight, and we go like this. We forgot a critical step. You hear the I get to take those 4 screws out again. Because what did I not do? You all know, you're sitting up there at home and you watch me not do it. I didn't grease that differential at all. Not a speck. Because I was too ready to see how good the mesh was. So ordinarily, because I assemble it in a sort of backwards fashion, we get our grease. I like to shoot a bunch of grease down onto the pinion, and then we'll install this. And then I like to use the grease needle to push it forward. So we go like this. That's not, wait, there we go. And I just squeeze a little grease on there. I will over grease if anything. We'll go around a little. Whenever I see a dry tooth, that is more than enough. So we'll do the same spin again, and I will ask you to access your random access memories and to see if we can remember the clatter and the chatter, which is dry gears. I mean, that's what dry gears sound like. I'm not sure if I'm using all the correct screws. Some of these might be a little too long. That one felt right. So let's see here. Yeah, a little bit. Wait, a little bit. Yeah. Is it the best sounding gear I've ever heard? No. The rear, honestly, for some reason, sounds a little bit better. But is it very inexpensive? Yes, that it is. And that clatter should, if history is any indicator, I had it and I lost it. That clatter should die down a little. Come on. I feel like I'm doing the world's worst lock picking here. There it is. I have indeed sourced, whether it is necessary or not, I have sourced replacement hardware for all of the involved screws. These were M3 by 12s for the kingpins, and I choose not to use. I don't trust the look of the other ones. I don't know if they're stainless. Yeah, much better, much better. I might have been able to actually get that a little even. Oh, I love when they just incidentally line up. So, as I had mentioned, we'll get the rear axle fixed because we're going to work. Generally, it's better to work from forward toward the back and adjust your link lengths accordingly to get your wheelbase to go. But we're going to dispense with that usual convention. And we are going to work from back to front. So the pinion, I went ahead and meshed the pinion. There's a lot of resistance on that 35 turn. So maybe it is enough gear reduction. It's nice and smooth, but I can't get it to rotate by just hitting it with my fingies. Also, the included pinion, which is let me count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is a 9. The included 32 pitch 9 is basically as small as this will go. This tends to blow out the camera, but we'll see if we can do it today. Yeah, it's blowing out the camera. How about if we hold it really far back? There you go. That is way too bright. It's in the slots all the way over, so you could gear this thing way up. There's a lot of slot there. I could see you getting easily like a 17 plus tooth in there. I don't know explicitly why you would do that, unless you had something very low kV in here. I mean, but we'll see. I'm not 100% sure what the FDR is. Are those 35s long enough? I'm gonna say no. Oh yeah, no, they will be. Okay. Getting this part together is always fun. So we just attached our necessary bits. Worst battle robot ever. Well, maybe not the worst. He's kind of okay. We shouldn't sell him too short. So this thing is going to be pretty radically skid forward. It had M3 by 30s for the back here. I replaced them with other M3 by 30s. We're now going to find out if that is long enough. Yes, M3 by 30 it is. There's a lot of threaded area on there. I like to, even though the front links aren't going to go on for a hot minute, I like to put the fronts in to keep the skid aligned. There we go. There we go. So, by gum, we're gonna do it. We're doing it. One might have thought it crazy, but we're gonna do it. I didn't even bother to put the cover over the motor, which probably would have been easier to do with it disassembled. But we're here together to do the things. The rear, I do this for cool relaxation. This is easy stuff. 4-link front is very nearly as easy. Not quite. There's still a little bit of fussing and fighting to get a front end. Anytime there's steering that isn't just servo and axle, you're going to have some stuff that's going to try to fight. And as we have pre-committed to chassis mounted steering, we are in for it indeed. Let me see, try to get this pinion angle right about there. Okay, so is it that hole or is it that? I mean, I've probably done it before. but I can't think of an instance where I've done it. How did I manage to get both sides of the axle above the frame rails? That would be very low profile. And what's craziest to me about completely botching that initial assembly is that moving the axle to the correct position underneath the chassis seems smarter. It only moved, the link mount one hole. It looked like it was going to be second hole, and it is in turn third hole. That drive shaft output is, at this juncture, questionable. It makes me long for Element and their very centered drive shaft outputs, because you know they're not going to try to get up close and cozy with the links. I grabbed 16s for upper chassis side, and I think that they're probably 14s. We're not really worried about fastener optimization at this point, because it's almost a foregone conclusion that this will be apart and then back together. We never say never. No, we absolutely never. Hitting the right link length, hitting the right mount position on the first try is more luck than anything. Even when this isn't our first time. I've built the RC Huiwao, which is basically the same as this Kuwu, just different fixtures and appointments. It came with that silver gearbox that's been out here a couple times, and a very different center skid. This part looks identical. The Huiwao uses Traxxas square tube body mounts. This uses the more typical round style, which I'm not mad about that at all. It'll be a lot easier to source body posts. Okay, we're just gonna kind of go links. I go links parallel to the bottom. Oh, that's nice. That's absolutely nice. So maybe a little lower. We're gonna go next to front hole. Those are the big guys. Let's try 16s again. And if they had a chassis spacer, I would use that, but I haven't looked for it, so we'll do nuts. Again, nothing that goes on here should, would, or could be considered permanent. We have no idea how anything is going to turn out once we get it put together. It is definitely not a 16. I would honestly say those are probably 20s. I guess that makes sense. 3 millimeters for the nut. The chassis looks particularly thick. In my head, I was thinking 3 millimeter plates, but I think it's thicker than that. We might be 4 millimeter plates. The battery is trying to take a nap on the driver, but we're not going to let it. We're just going to steal the battery out of the impactor, which has 2 LEDs instead of 1. Yeah, that'll get us through. That'll get us through. Get the 20s on here. I do want to get that drive shaft lined up. And mind you, again, these need spacers. Okay, so longer than 20s, because we're going to need spacers to get the shocks out a little straighter, unless we opt to change it to small diameter, to 10 millimeter springs, which I don't think we will, because what's happening here is we've got a slight little amount of interference. The spring is basically on the rail. Those are Element grays, and even Element grays flip down to that. Yeah, he could actually, that's actually up too high. I would go down to the next row of holes on the 90s. Yeah, the link mounts hit. I was worried about interference between upper and lower links, but we do not have that. That is just a little, although I don't know. Yeah, no, it's too high. I was going off of flat skid, and the skid is kicked. So he would be sitting, in my opinion, he would be sitting too low in this configuration. What I want to know is, is this drive shaft long enough? Well, I mean, it does have a lot of engagement range, so it quite likely is long enough. Is it keyed? No. Is it possible to key it? No. So look at the silver bits we've got there and there. So we're about 20 degrees out of phase, and if we go to the next spline over, we're really close, a couple degrees out of phase, less than the width of a spline. And I have found that basically, not all things being equal, but a great number of things being equal, you have to get your drive shafts really out of phase before it manifests itself as a problem. I mean, like 90 degrees out of phase. And yes, this drive shaft is definitely long enough. I generally prefer a less exposed. I just want enough space to be able to install and remove the drive shaft at will. This has quite a bit of exposure here, but it's not really going to negatively impact, I don't think. It hasn't in the past. Okay, this pin does not fit. No, oh my goodness, that's hot. Whoa! Okay, so we may have a slightly oversized pin at 251. Let's drop that guy off. Grab ourselves a pin. This is the ultimate realistic expression of what happens. Yep. When you're saving money, many times, you're saving that money for a reason. Yeah. 238. A tenth of a millimeter is significant. This one should slide right home. So that is pretty much the fault of this. They probably turned it to the size that it needed to be, or cast it to the size it needed to be, and then when it got plated, it was just that much too thick. While we're at it, you know what, I have a couple seconds. I don't know why, but more often than not, I feel like I'm rushing for some reason. Like, oh, we've got to get through. So I'm going to go lower, but same row, same column. One row lower, same column. So these springs might be fine in the rear. We will see with the skid forward with that kick and how short the front links are. Very short. The links on the one that is finished on the RC Huiwao are 84 eye to eye compared to the around 185 eye to eye for the rears. And I used a completely different link kit on that build, so I can tell you exactly what this one is. Oh, almost. I mean, with the big Traxxas bow ties, I will probably just replace the Traxxas bow ties. We're pretty close to standing up straight. This one's got a little bit more chassis bonk on it. Yeah, that is a lot better. That's a lot better, and not only is it better, it feels like the rate. That doesn't feel bad. I love a setup that will incidentally come out to where we can run the same rate front and rear. It doesn't happen often enough. Eye to eye, 175 for the lowers and 170 for the uppers. There's only 5 millimeters, so we should be having an unchanged. Yeah, the pinion angle does not change. So I think that angle is pretty good. It's not super optimal, because if we clock this more to aim that up more to get the pinion up above that link bend, it's gonna get wonky. I think that's pretty close. We're having to accommodate for the kick in the gearbox. But that's not bad. That's just factory-filled TRX4 shocks with element gray springs on them. I would change them. There's a, let me look at the board. There's an equivalent to the element. Element grays are 1.4. Traxxas whites are 1.6. It's a bit more of a jump than I would like. Those also feel real good. We're going to go with whatever springs work. That is the usual way. And as I'm sure you can see, that is going to be very skid forward. So this guy will be, well, we can mock it. We need to be at around a 313, which is right about there. That's not bad. That's not bad. No, that's going to lay out pretty nice. And that's looking at, this is a very rough guesstimate, about 70. About 70 eye to eye. And the lowers are these guys. Yeah, you know what? This might be okay. If we come out a little forward of 313 in the wheelbase, I think we're probably safe out to about 320. Let's do something ill-advised here in this closing moment of the day, which is we're going Lakewood. Pardon me, sir. Oh. Look at that. Look at that. That is, wait, you can't look at that. It's partially in the frame. Don't move, don't move, don't move. Okay. Wait, get this straight. Okay, there we go. Yeah, the front actually needs to be forward a little bit. So that front axle needs to be forward just a couple more millimeters. How tucked are we on this side? Oh, we're not. That's a narrow body. That's why I'm wondering if we're going to end up with class 1s on this. Also, the angle is bonkers of the chassis right now because, you know, we have one attached and one not. Right? So, next time we will go about getting we'll get the CMS in place, the bracketry of that. We'll go through the installation of the CMS. We will go through the, hopefully, oh, please, say a little prayer for me, of getting the Panhard and drag links set. This uses a laydown servo with, yeah, it's just an array of holes. So we definitely have ability to move that Panhard fore or aft to get the axle set. So when we go through it next time, we'll definitely talk about front end theory. Ooh, that's a borderline Linkin Park reference. We'll talk about front end theory and getting the link set and getting the drive shaft in place, and then working on getting the Panhard and drag links. Set the axle first, then deal with the steering, not vice versa, because everything is dynamic and everything plays off of each other. So when you make any link changes beyond, I would say, just the front lowers, I think you can set your front lowers with minimal worries, because that is effectively setting the wheelbase. And we need to set everything's pre-trimmed nowadays, everything's 313 nowadays. So we have a small window of wheelbase that we can work with. So we can set those front lowers. We'll get them out to get into that 315 area for the wheelbase. I'm just kind of collecting everything in a box. It helps, you know, you keep your hands busy, idle hands and all. So we will set the wheelbase first, and then we will adjust Panhard position. If that means drilling more holes in the Panhard mount, we hope, of course, as always, we hope against hope that the Panhard mount will orient itself in a way that is beneficial for everyone. But whatever axle they had in mind when they designed this chassis, I don't know what axle that is. I do know that it has to be offset pumpkin. All of these gearbox styles, I mean, imagine if your pumpkin is centered. It's not going to get it past 540. If you go to a real pancake outrunner, you can get away with it. It looks like we're going to clear front upper. Front upper doesn't look like it's going to be an issue, because on a TRX4 axle, oh, it's going to be really close. It's gonna be really close. We might have to use a high clearance on its side to get around the motor. This was a short jump to the conclusion that I feel like most of these chassis and most of the parts of these chassis were designed with a little pancake of an outrunner in mind. I like things that'll clear 540, and yet I choose to build things out of things that do not clear a 540. So that will be next time. We'll set the wheelbase. We'll get the lower link set. Looks like neighborhood of 70 millimeters. I'm repeating it again so I don't forget it. And then we will go into the long and arduous process of panhard and drag link, and I will involve you in it as much as I can physically and mentally withstand. That is next time, and I will see you in that next one, the second installment of It Came From the Workbench, volume 44. We're moving our way up. We're moving our way up, and there of course have been some that haven't been numbered, so it's actually probably well past 44. But this is the guy. He's going to be a Corvair. He's probably going to sit right about that height. So he's going to be pretty LCG for a guy that's portaled out, which is why I'm not opposed to putting Class 1s on there. And we haven't decided on what Class 1s they'll be. We haven't decided if they'll be Class 1s. We'll get to all that much later. In the next installment, we put the front end together, and then we'll start doing some finishing work of getting body mounts attached, etc., etc. I look forward to seeing that one. In between now and then, please one and all do your very best to have a good one, everybody. We'll see you again here from the Canyon real soon. And always remember, don't be part of the problem. Be the whole problem.